Hello again, everybody. Mike Pavlik greeting you here as we embark on another season of Highlands Golden Rams football. Mike Choma and I will be entering our 25th anniversary season, bringing you Highlands football and basketball here on Highlands High Sports. Glad you found us. You can find the games right here and on Comcast Channel 190 every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. We'll get into more of that later on as we go. But we'd like to get the season rolling here. Season will start in a couple weeks, an early start this year for Highlands. And the WPIAL, as they will start on Friday night, August the 23rd, so right around the corner. I'd like to tell you about that. The Rams are in a new conference. We'll start by reviewing last season, which was a good one as it ended up for Highlands, finishing 6-5, making the playoffs for the second straight year under Matt Bonaslawski. He is the only coach in Highlands history to do that. No coach had ever made the playoffs in his first season at Highlands, so Bones will try to extend that streak this year as the Rams will drop to 3A. In the WPIAL alignments. The Rams set at 4-1 midway through the season, but they had lost their quarterback Aaron Randolph, and then a 3-game losing streak hit them, and they were 4-4 after the big loss to Kiski at Golden Ram Stadium before they went to Armstrong on a rainy, foggy Friday night to play the Riverhawks. Both of those teams desperately needed that game. The loser was going to be pretty much knocked out, and that's what happened. Highlands held on to win that one, 17-15, after Armstrong scored a desperation touchdown on a 2-yard Hail Mary pass. Go back and find it. It's things are archived here. You can find that. But then the Rams stopped the 2-point conversion and got out on Armstrong with a 17-15 win. Then needing to beat Hampton the final game of the season, which they did. That got them into the playoffs, coupled with Armstrong's loss at Kiski. Kiski made it also, and the Rams were back in. Eventually losing to Central Valley 28-7 on the road in the playoffs, but making it was a whole lot better than if they would have gone into the offseason on a long losing streak after getting off to such a tremendous start. We mentioned quarterback Aaron Randolph. He came back to help out near the end of the season. He, of course, has graduated, along with others such as Luke Bombalski and Jordan Tavares. And these guys are going to have to be replaced, and this is where you hope for people to step up. Minaj Lucas may be at the quarterback position, among others. Darius Cherry flashed in some brief appearances at running back last year and was very good at linebacker. We'll see if he can do that again. And Montrell Johnson, of course, will be in his third season starting as a senior at defensive back and also at the wide receiver position. So Montrell will be counted on heavily this season for the Rams. Along the lines, lost a group, but have a group back with experience. Aiden Vargo, Brennan Hayes, Devin Withrop, and Anthony Mistrick have all graduated, but they'll be replaced by guys that have also played a lot as underclassmen. Braden Latwicki, James Naviglia, Jordan Gangloff, Angelo Markey, and Caden Dodowski. All those guys have gotten starts on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and hopefully that they will be back and continue their good work this year for Highlands as we embark on a brand new world. And I mentioned that. The opening game is August 23rd against Armstrong. That's the only opponent Highlands is going to play this year that did not show up on last year's schedule. 9 new opponents after this Armstrong game, so that's going to make it interesting also. A lot of work for the coaches, not a lot of familiarity, so we'll see how they're able to navigate through this season. Armstrong, 5-5 a year ago. We mentioned Highlands beat them the next to the last game of the year. Then they went to Kiski and lost that night and were knocked out of the playoffs. Frank Fabian in his 13th season, his 10th at Armstrong. Of course, the first 3 were when he was coach of Katanning. He's 1-4 all time against Highlands. The only win came at Golden Ram Stadium 2 years ago, if you remember. The big Caden Olson game when Armstrong put up over 50 points against Highlands that night. 56-35 was the score. And the Rams went down. That's the only time Armstrong's beaten Highlands. This is the Week 0 game on August the 23rd. August 30th, a week later, Elizabeth Forward comes in. This is a tough opponent. They are a 3A opponent. They stay in 3A. They were in the Interstate Conference a year ago, where they went 10-2. So this is going to be a tough one. John DeMarco, in his second season, had been a longtime assistant before he took over a year ago. We mentioned they stay in 3A. They beat West Mifflin in their first playoff game and then lost to Avonworth to knock them out of the playoffs. Speaking of Avonworth, Friday night, September 6th, the Rams were supposed to go to Avonworth, but that was before Aliquippa sued the PIAA. This is kind of how these things go these days. The competitive balance formula is a big sticking point for Aliquippa. They won their case, It's still in litigation, but this season's going to go on with Aliquippa in 4A Parkway. So because of that, that changed all the crossover opponents for this game. And instead of Highlands playing Avonworth, they're going to play Newcastle at Newcastle on the 6th of September. Can't wait to get back up there. There's plenty of obstructed view seats, so you might want to, of course, on the other side of the field where the Rams fans will sit, there aren't any, but there are a lot of poles. We'll see that with our camera. Trust me, it'll be fun. Fred Mazzacco's in his first season, and he's got a mess to clean up. They had fallen on hard times at Newcastle. Stacey Robinson there for 2 years, 2-18, no playoffs for a couple years in the Parkway, 1-9 a year ago. Their only win was against Ambridge, a team that Highlands also beat. So Fred Mazzacco comes in as coach, AD, and track and field coach. He's got a lot on his plate. So, but he's familiar there, and he would be, a good guy to bring back to Newcastle because he had been there before. He spent quite a few years, 12 years as head coach at Neshannock and was very successful there. So back home now, Fred Mazzacco at Newcastle. Now it's time that we get into our conference season, and before we do, we might as well tell you where we're going to be. It's 3A for Highlands this year, moving down from 3A. It's going to be a new conference, but a lot of familiar opponents. Burrell, Deer Lakes, East Allegheny, Freeport, Highlands, of course, Amani Christian, and the Valley Vikings. A 7-team league. There are 20 teams in 3A this year, 2 7s and 1 6. So the playoffs will be the first 3 teams in every conference get in, and there will be 3 wild cards. In the past, what the WPIAL had done has had the Gardner Points choose that. Not this year. The Gardner Points won't do it. It's going to be the committee that makes the brackets are going to pick the wild card teams. So that gives you a 12-team bracket, which means the first week 4 teams will sit. They will get a bye. The first round, the teams with the best record will host. And then in the second round, the 4 teams that sat will host, and then you will go to neutral sites after that. So that's how it will work. 12 against 5, 11 against 6, so on and so forth. So that's the playoff situation. The Rams in 3A, I think it's going to be the Allegheny 7. Last year, the conference these guys were in were the Allegheny 6. The WPIAL doesn't put that on their site. It's up to us to figure it out. I think Mike White does it. I'm not exactly sure. So conference play will begin on Friday night, September 13th. The Rams will play East Allegheny. Frank Cortazzo Jr. will be the first-year head coach for EA. His father used to coach there, a very famous coach in the annals of East Allegheny. Don Pecora resigned after 11 years and 8 playoffs. Read into that what you will, but he is no longer there. They were the champions of the Allegheny 6 Conference a year ago, so they're in the same place. They were 9-3. They beat South Park their first playoff game and then fell to Bell Vernon, and that's what knocked them out. So Frank Cortazzo Jr. will have his first conference game at the helm of East Allegheny at Golden Ram Stadium against the Rams on September 13th. Friday night, September the 20th, the Rams will visit Amani Christian. We're going to go to Graham Field in Wilkinsburg. So pack up the van and all the extra food and stuff for that. It should be a fun trip out there. Leroy Johnson is the head coach there. Interesting guy. He was the coach at Stowe Rocks and did a tremendous job coaching the Vikings. Made a couple of trips to the WPIAL finals with Rocks. Amani Christian moves up from AA this year. They were 8-3 in the Allegheny Conference last year. Beating Waynesburg in the playoffs and then losing to Mohawk. Mohawk, of course, had some history with Burrell. We'll get to them later. And again, we will see them Friday night, September 20th at Graham Field in Wilkinsburg. Then September 27th, the Rams stay on the road at Deer Lakes against the Lancers. Tim Burke is the coach in his 7th season. He's the former quarterback there. He quarterbacked them when Tony Taliani was the coach. And he has another tie to Deer Lakes coaches past. His father-in-law is Larry Romas, who was the head coach at Deer Lakes at some point after Tony Taliani there in the late 90s, early 2000s, architect of that complicated West Deer offense. Larry is Tim's father-in-law. So we remember seeing him play back in the day, back in the 90s for Coach T. They were in 3A, 8-4 a year ago, finished 3rd in the Allegheny 6. They beat Southmoreland in their first playoff game and then lost to Bell Vernon. This seems we have a thing there with them. So Bell Vernon did well. So that will be the 27th of September. the Deer Lakes Lancers at Deer Lakes. October 4th, Friday night, the Freeport Yellow Jackets. We renew that rivalry back into Golden Rams Stadium. John Gaylott, in his 17th season, is the Dean of Coaches in this conference this year. And he played for Don Early back in the day, which should say something. They stay in 3A. Also in this conference, they were 3-7 a year ago, finished 5th, did not make the playoffs. They started 2-1, but then they ended up losing their last 5 as things kind of fell apart for the Lancers. But it'll be good to have them again. That rivalry renewed Friday night, October the 4th, against the Freeport Yellow Jackets. Friday night, October 11th, the Burrell Bucks into Golden Rams Stadium as that is renewed. Sean Liotta in his 7th season. Remember, he used to be the coach at Albert Gallatin, and the interesting thing for him is he would drive from Lower Burrell all the way down past Uniontown to Albert Gallatin every day back and forth. He saved a lot of mileage just being able to drive a couple of miles out to Burrell High School. So he is back in his 7th year, done a good job at Burrell. He's a Springdale grad, of course. The Burrell moves up from 2A. They were 4-7 a year ago in 2A. They were 5th in the Allegheny Conference, and they will be in 3 this year. They, of course, lost that playoff game to Mohawk where there was all the controversy in that game, and hopefully that none of that anymore. But Burrell got the revenge. They beat Mohawk in a basketball playoff game this year. I saw that. So as they made their run, the Burrell Bucks did basketball team to the WPIL championship game where they ended up losing to Deer Lakes. Then we call the Sam Albert Special. Friday night, October 18th, smack dab in the middle of conference season, the Rams will go to McGuffey in a non-conference game. You never exactly know what to do when these things happen. Nate Perry will be in his first season. He replaces Ed Dalton, who has stayed on as AD, but has retired as football coach. Ed Dalton there for 10 years, made the playoffs 9 times. Nate Perry's a longtime assistant at McGuffey, so he will be there and understands everything that's going on. They're going to move up to 3A this year. They were in 2A in the Century Conference a year ago. 8-4, finished second to Wash High. As a matter of fact, they lost 2 games to Washington, the one in the regular season and the second time, which knocked them out of the playoffs. That will be McGuffey. The Highlanders at McGuffey Friday night, October 18th. And then we finish the season at Valley against the Vikings. This is back into conference play. Mark Adams in his 2nd season, previously head coach at his alma mater at Leechburg and also at Southmoreland. Tough times at Valley. Mark replaced old friend Dave Hevner there. 2-8 a year ago in the Allegheny 6. Not only did Valley not make the playoffs last year, Valley has not made the playoffs since 2013. It has been 10 years since that once proud program has seen playoff action. And we'll see how things go for Valley this year. That'll be the final game for Highlands, Week 9, October 25th at Valley. So that's the schedule, kind of a little synopsis of where we are. Before we go, we want to tell you where you can find the games. We mentioned right here where you found this. Highlands High Sports on YouTube. The games will be archived. We'll have them up the next day. You can watch those. Should be a good time. And then also football Friday night. Friday night games will be played on Tuesday at 8 o'clock on Comcast Channel 190. And our area has been expanded, so it's going to be all over the Comcast viewing area in the Pittsburgh area. You'll be able to catch these games. So we hope you'll do that. Before we go, we want to thank the Gridiron Club. Without them, none of this is possible, and we really do appreciate their help with us all 25 years. And without them, none of this happens. Also, our sponsors, if you don't mind, I'm going to read them because I don't want to miss anyone, and I do want to make sure to get them all in there for you. B&J Sports, of course, Glenn Mills, since the beginning. These first couple have been with us since the beginning. Thanks to Glenn, we saw him last week, and he's raring to go for another season. Expects big things from the Rams this year. The Boucher Agency, John and Nick, and, of course, Mel before them, always great supporters of high school sports in the AK Valley. Mel, of course, has gone into retirement. Of course, Dad Merle, back with the car dealership back in the day. Those guys were big sponsors back in the TV3 days of WPIL, local AK Valley sports, and we thank the Bouchers as always. Highland Tire, again, since the beginning, thanks to the Bonnettes for all of their help. Wireless Zone, John Mason, same thing. Of course, Micah played all those years for Highlands, and John has always been a big supporter with the Wireless Zone. Also, Lucchino Insurance and Financial. As we say, Joe and Joe always know, we saw Joe and Joe last week, and we always appreciate their help, and always, especially in these trying financial times, Joe and Joe too always know. Dan Timmons Painting, of course, thanks to Dan for all his help over the years. Of course, Braden and Daniel continuing the family tradition at Dan Timmons Painting, and thanks to them as they, as usual, sponsor our starting lineups. Ron Gillette Towing, always aboard for football season. We did not see John this year when we went to visit, but we did see Sue, and it's always good to see her. Thanks to John and everyone there at Gillette for their continued support over football years gone by and into the future. Beanie Home Renovations, thanks to Brian Nee. All his support over the years continues this year. Thank you, Brian, and we do appreciate considering that the B is always busy. Phoenix Physical Therapy, Zach Bartolotta. Got a chance to talk to him. Man, was it busy in there. Does a great job with all of your injuries and rehabs, and we do appreciate all of his help. Unflooded, Brian Mara. It's been rainy, it's been not rainy, and now it's rainy again. You probably want to call Brian. He can get those basements clean and get rid of all that mold. Thanks to Brian Mara. Harvest Moon, Coffee and Chocolates, Desiree Singleton. Says that people are still ordering large amounts of chocolate even in the summertime, and she has to remind them, don't leave it in the car. Good move there. Thanks to Desiree. The coffee's tremendous. 2 locations, of course, Trentham and now in Natrona Heights. Philippe's Family Dining and Pizzeria, thanks to Mark and Kim for their continued support. They've topped the board here recently, and it's a lot of fun there Friday nights after games, and we do appreciate their help. Pittsburgh Paws Pet Resort, thanks to the Bookers. What a great place they have out there. A great place to kennel up your dog if you're going on vacation, daytime, or whatever the case may be. Beautiful. Lots of room to run. And I said they do doggy daycare, so you can put them there in the daytime too. It's a great place. And Greatness Athletics Fitness, thanks to Gary Negley, of course, still holds the record for most yards rushing in a game, as he did it in Freeport years ago. And Gary trains a lot of our football players, and we do appreciate his help. Well, again, that wraps it up. Again, first game will be Friday night, August 23rd, against Armstrong at Golden Ram Stadium. Be there, aloha, and we will see you the next morning on Highlands High Sports, and on Tuesday night, following Tuesdays, 8 o'clock on Comcast, Channel 190. Thanks for watching, everybody. This is Mike Pavlik saying so long, everybody.